All right, hi, and welcome to another SEO Hangout with Josh Bachynski. That would be me. We have some really interesting stuff today. Some different leaks from Google, different than some of the normal stuff they've been saying. So some pretty interesting things to take a look at. So let's dive right in and do that. So on August 16th, Joe Mueller had another Hangout. And on that date, he mentioned a number of interesting things, and I'll just jump right into what they are. So the first one was, he said something that's somewhat obvious, that we ignore duplicated or scraped pages. My orange platoon cucumber test that some of you may know that I did a couple videos on a few months back now. If you want to check out those videos, by all means, check them out on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/jbachins, JBACHYNS. You're probably already there, but just in case you're not. Or if you want to email me while I'm thinking about it before I forget, by all means you can email me as well. My email address is joshbachynski@gmail.com. And you can also follow me at Twitter at joshbachynski. So I did these orange platoon cucumber tests a few months ago. And one of the pages I linked up had a bunch of completely duplicated form profile backlinks. So the same paragraph on every single page with an exact match query link in it. Very recently, amongst other tests along similar lines. And recently, that was on Orange Platoon Cucumber Blog 2. And for those of you who recall. And very recently, that site has kind of pretty much dropped out of my test ranking. And I've taken a look at what links are spidered, and it is indeed the case that up until very recently, for the entirety of this year, even though the links were completely duplicated, up until very recently, those pages were fully indexed and the link equity seemed to be passed, and that page seemed to rank just as well as all the other pages I had running in the test, with some minor variations here or there for various reasons, which you can find out if you go back and look at all those videos that I made. But very recently, all those backlinks that were completely duplicated seem to have been dropped out of the index entirely. And also, if you've been checking the example bad links that they've been sending, if you take a look at the examples that they send you, a lot of them are duplicated pages with very highly commercial or exact match query backlinks. So all the evidence seems to indicate, and John Mueller did directly say, we ignore all duplicated and scraped backlinks, as far as we can tell that they're the duplicated or scraped version. Or pages, that is, and that would include pages that have backlinks in them as well. Okay, the next one is, speaking of bad links, he did mention, that was, of course, all that I just mentioned, of course, more has to do with the linking algorithms. He also mentioned for Panda, which was interesting, that you kind of have to worry about links as well for Panda, but not because of the bad link juice it'll send you or anything like that, because of that links are content too. And so he leaked something very interesting, that you shouldn't have off-topic links or off-topic content on your page, because they were talking about it in terms of link algorithms. But he said also for Panda you want to worry about that. In your sidebar or in the main content or in the footer, because that can also affect your ranking for Panda as well. So it's something interesting to think about, that if you have off-topic content or links, a paragraph, a small little paragraph, trying to put a link in there, or off-topic links or whatnot. Off-topic was the main buzz catchphrase that was used. So if you have non-relevant content or off-topic content, sometimes what people call spammy content, that can be a particular issue for Panda as well. So, people are getting really annoyed, of course, with all these linking changes and all these algorithm changes, and so he's been constantly asked, how do we rank now in 2013 moving into 2014? And he's already mentioned this. You can check my past videos. I've already mentioned tons of really good leaks about what John Mueller specifically said, this is how you rank in 2013-14. He mentioned some of these things again. He said, this is very interesting what he said, it's not the typical thing. He said, make sure you have small URLs that are easy to copy and paste and to type in, so that it's easy for people to quote-unquote share them. And to also, and I quote, add social media buttons and have calls to action. So that'll help to get people sharing your content. And this, and I quote, definitely helps, end quote. So it's very interesting. Obviously he can only give white hat suggestions, but it's a very interesting white hat suggestion and a very clever kind of thinking of it like a black hat, but a white hat suggestion is that he suggests to use social media buttons, call to actions, where people, where it pops up and suggests that they like it because hopefully they're delighted with your content. Hopefully they like it so much they want to share it. And there's nothing wrong with doing a call to action for that. It's against their guidelines to do a call to action, say, hey, please link to me. Here's the linking code, that kind of a thing, or to ask for a link. That's kind of quasi against their guidelines. But call it asking for a share and calling to action with a big pop-up or some kind of more egregious pop-up that people will notice asking to share, or even the pay with a tweet or the pay with a tweet or pay with a +1 or pay with a like. Give them the first paragraph, and then if they want more content or the little first bit of an image, if they want more of it, they have to pay with a tweet or pay with the +1 or pay with a like. If you have content that people really like and really want to see, that would work really well, and that would help you getting shared. Now, in my experiments for social, it doesn't really seem to be +1s or even tweets, really. Tweets to a certain extent, +1s or likes, don't really seem to really help that much when they're +1ing or liking your page. It's the social shares which really seems to boost the ranking, and I've seen direct ranking correlations. And I can send you some of that information if you want to know about how social is working. It seems to be social sharing, though, that seems to help the most, and building up your social profile seems to be much more useful, and when you correlate that with a website as a ranking signal than just buying 1,000 +1s or buying 1,000 likes. Probably because of the very fact that that's immediately what people tried to do. And who knows, it could be that likes and +1s, even though there hasn't been that much data to show that they really increase ranking directly in terms of all the social, that does seem to help and that Google does say help. +1s and likes don't seem to be directly to the site, don't seem to be the main signal, but you never know. I mean, they could be equivalent to a PR0 link, and so how many PR0 links do you need to rank these days, especially in competitive niches? Well, you could need thousands, right? So I don't know if a lot of people go so far as to buy 10,000 or 20,000 +1s that stick, that they all stick. If they all stick, then that's another thing entirely, right? So that's another thing to keep in mind for how to rank these days, and John Mueller was kind enough to leak some of that. And again, as I said, he said similar things in previous videos that I've talked about as well. Okay, so then moving on to Penguin, our favorite cuddly fair weather friend Penguin. He did mention a couple things about that. So in case there was any doubt on your part, John Mueller said point blank that anchor text is being tracked by Google. Duh. I mean, for a lot of us, it's going to be a duh moment. But there's still some people out there who doubt it. John Mueller said point blank, yes, Google tracks anchor text. Yes, it is quote unquote a problematic part of links. And yes, he does suggest you use not only webmaster tools, but he actually goes further, and this is interesting. He says that he suggests you use a link report tool that does allow you to see the anchor text and this is what he said, point blank, remove the problematic ones, quote unquote, or the spammy ones. So, of course, he doesn't exactly tell you which ones are problematic or spammy, but he leaves that open to your own interpretation and assumes you will already understand what that means. In my opinion, for that, it means the highly commercial ones, especially in terms of Penguin, and I have tons of experiments to prove this, and you can go back and watch my Penguin. I have 2 videos on it, and also a video on payday loans, and I've done at least 60 experiments at this point. For Penguin, it's an exact match query to exact match domain correlation. So let's say you're running my favorite example, redapples.com, trying to rank for red apples, sell those apples. And all of your links say redapples.com or www.redapples.com, and you thought you were clever because you're using a brand URL and they'll never catch that. Or it was red space apples or get the best red space apples. Any of those variations, or even just red in it or apples, those are all exact match query links, except for the red or apples ones. Those are partial match query links. Those are, really especially the exact match query links, those are the ones that every single Penguin site and every single payday loan site that I looked at, the vast majority of their links were a high percentage of exact match query to EMD. And so there was a lot of false positives as well. SalvationArmy.org was hit, ETS.org was hit. Even the well-known white hat SEO Cyrus Shepard, his site was hit. And clearly that was a false positive because he's the white hat SEO and he's never done any link building. But because people linked to him, Cyrus Shepard this, blah, 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 blah. His site, cyrusshepard.com, was hit. Check it out, cyrusshepard.com. Check it in Ahrefs. You'll see that it has a high percentage. And he has already put out a couple articles talking about how he was hit by Penguin. And he was a false positive. And so I emailed him and said, look, at Cyrus, this is why you're hit. And then he was like, well, I've never done any link building. And I said, it doesn't matter. Google doesn't care about false positives. They don't care at all about false positives. They don't care about who's hit. And yes, they are lazy enough to just hit a bunch of those sites. And as long as the end user doesn't notice, and because there's a bazillion websites to serve, the end user doesn't care if they get this site or that site, they don't care about false positives. So it's not necessarily a natural looking SEO that you need to do now. It's the SEO that no one else is. Because it's the SEO that everyone is doing is that Google's looking for, and they're being extremely lazy and they don't care about false positives. So it doesn't matter if you're a white hat SEO or a black hat SEO. That terminology is completely and utterly meaningless because Google goes for trends of what a lot of people did to try and manipulate their rankings, whether they're white hat or not, and whether you accidentally fell into that category or not. They don't care, and they're not going to help you. You've got to help yourself. Okay. And unfortunately, if you were lumped into that category, Joe Mueller said, point blank, don't expect Penguin to run for several months. And this was in August he said this. So I don't know if that means from the date he was talking about or if he was talking about in the past. The conversation got kind of convoluted because people were interrupting him and whatnot. But he said, don't expect Penguin to run very often for at least 6 months. I don't know if he was meaning from when the first one ran or from in August when he was talking about. I hope he meant from when the first one ran because a lot of people are hit by this. And like I said, there's a lot of false positives as well. At best, if they're going to follow the historical trend, at best we can expect kind of a seasonal approach to Penguin for them to run a spring version of Penguin in April or May and a fall version of Penguin in October or so. So if that's the case, and let's hope that it is, and just for the sake of risk mitigation, let's assume it is. And if that's the case, you need to get your bad Penguin links, and only your bad Penguin links, because you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot, into your Disavow file ASAP. Because who knows how long it takes them to process that data and churn it and then crank out another Penguin release. So if they follow history, last year they released it on October 5th. So they might just do the exact same thing for as far as we know. And so they might, because they announced it. I mean, they could release it any other time. But last year they released it then. So hopefully they'll follow the same pattern and they'll release it this year in October. And if they do, you want to get those Disavow links into the Penguin links in the Disavow file ASAP. And if you don't know how to do that, I do strongly suggest you hire an SEO who knows how to find the useless links that also relate to Penguin that you can also do without, that are quite possibly hurting you or at least useless, namely myself or some other people. John Mueller mentioned, and I'm just going to mention his quote that he mentioned verbatim. And he said this, and I quote, Penguin looks at the overall picture of the site, not just the links. So keep in mind that when you're trying to fix Penguin, it is, of course, mostly link-based, as we know now from all this data. But it's not only link-based, especially Penguin 2. As I said, there is an EMQ to EMD correlation. It does have to do with on-page over-optimization as well. Remember, Google originally called Penguin the web spam algorithm. Or the over-optimization algorithm. And they keep calling Penguin the over-optimization or the web spam algorithm. So it's about web spam or over-optimization necessarily, not about links necessarily. It just so happens that a lot of over-optimization a lot of keyword stuffing happens in links and anchor text. And then they pass that negative value on to the site it's pointing at. So yes, it is mostly link-based, of course, as we now know. But Don't underestimate the on-page quality. Every single site I look at that I was hit by penguin very clearly, because it's an analytics boom and a waterfall on that date, so it's completely unambiguous. You know when you're hit by penguin. All of them also had a lot of on-page keyword stuffing as well. So you want to make sure you clear that up too, because it's easy to do. It should take just a few minutes per page. If you have a CMS or you have a good programmer, you should be able to do it much faster. It's completely unnecessary in this day and age, and apparently does seem to have something to do with Penguin, or possibly any other over-optimization or keyword stuffing algorithm they have. Okay, and finally, of course, as I mentioned, they claim you want to use the disavow file to try and clean up Penguin. You can also, of course, delete the source of the link if at all possible. And they used to say you could no index the target page it's pointing to, but John Mueller recently took that statement back and mentioned that he was wrong. You cannot no index the page. That these links pointing to your site still count, which is very interesting, because that directly corroborates some evidence I originally had. I had a site, one of my own money sites actually, that I was making money off of. I'm an affiliate of various networks also, and I also do SEO. Primarily I do SEO, but I do have some affiliate sites. And one of my affiliate sites, I'm fully ready, prepared to admit, was completely hit by Penguin 2, fairly strongly, even though I thought I was being very careful with my natural looking backlink pages, fully spun, well over 80% uniqueness. And the commercial text all had natural stop words, and very little bit of it, like maybe 8%, was exact match query. Not really even. But apparently that was high enough of a percentage for Penguin 2 still to hit my own site somewhat, marginally hard. Not a complete fall off, but a good 50% reduction. So that goes to show that Penguin is somewhat granular. It also goes to show, here's the interesting part though, that unfortunately I made a mistake when I was doing my SEO. One of the primary ways I used to like to route link juice, and I have no problem sharing this trick because one, it's not so important anymore, and two, I don't actually recommend that you use it unless you're doing churn and burn SEO and you have no choice but to build backlinks, the kind that I think are probably too risky moving forward and probably shouldn't bother to be made. However, with that giant proviso, you probably shouldn't do what I'm about to say. However, for those of you who have to do churn and burn, or for those of you who are locked into that mindset and can't think of any other way, or who already have the resources to do it and can make it, the TCO of it, the total cost of ownership, actually viable. Only for those people, I'm about to suggest a very clever way of routing your link juice, which you may already know or you may not. And that is to say, routing your link juice through 301s on your site or through rel canonical pages. Rel canonical pages and 301s route link juice pretty much at a near 100%. And so it's a very clever way and an easy way to immediately remove any bad link juice that's pointing at your site, which I devised this tactic well over a year ago and have been using it successfully to rank dozens of sites. Now, on this particular occasion, unfortunately, I made a mistake, and I use very common index pages that different various web servers will use. So default.php, default.html, index.htm, index.html, all capitals index.html, index1.html, etc. Google already does a good job at catenating the signals that are sent to these pages that they assume are default pages or default index pages, depending on IIS or Apache or what web server you're using. And I also put rel canonical in these pages to point to index.html or HTML or just to the slash, the root, the web root, or whatever page I am actually trying to serve off of, and concatenate those linking signals too. This way, if I have enough of them, in fact, if you're smart, you have a program generating thousands, in which case you can surgically remove any link. This way, I can remove any link at will. So I was, of course, using this practice. But I made a mistake, and I pointed a bunch of link juice from about, a couple dozen good, high-quality guest blog posts that I had purchased to, I forget what it was, index.php, I think. But I had forgotten, or my virtual assistant had forgotten to make an index.php on that particular site. And so I was losing all that link juice. That link juice wasn't pointing to my site. It was pointing to a page at 404. And it was an Apache 404 that was served. I could check the HTTP status headers. And so not only was I not getting this link juice, but when Penguin hit me, this is where most of the red apples, the EMQ to EMD links were pointing, right? And so I found it fascinating that Penguin hit me, even though that those links were not being counted, the ones that really had the exact match query to EMD correlation in them, the redapples.com link to pointing to red apples. It's not actually red apples, by the way. That's just my example. In case that wasn't obvious enough for some people. And so I wasn't getting the link juice, but Penguin still hit me. And so this confirms what John Mueller was saying, right? That Google seems to do some tricky finagling with links, and we know they do. We know that they follow just straight text URLs. We know that they follow no follow, even though they claim not to pass any link equity. There's still some experiments and some people that think that they do pass link equity, but it's just like 0.0001 of it. If a regular do follow link on that page would have passed 0.1 page rank, a no follow will pass 0.0001 or something along those lines. But in this particular case, not to get too off topic, I apologize, that John Mueller has mentioned that no indexing the page is not sufficient, that you have to actually serve a 404 and 410, and a 404 might not even be enough. It might have to be a 410 because these links were pointing to a 404, but maybe because it was index.php and they thought we just made a mistake, the webmaster had made a mistake, they counted the link juice anyway. I don't think they did, though, because then once I found out this mistake, I made an index.php, and even though I had been hit by Penguin, my rankings went up slightly after I did that. So it's interesting. You can get more link equity even if you have Penguin, or maybe it was just that those links had already hurt me, put a spam flag or a Penguin flag on that page it was pointing to, or the site it was pointing to, because John Mueller has mentioned that Penguin does put a either page-based or site-based flag. He wasn't specific on your site. So this could be some evidence that indicates it is a site-based flag. This could be some evidence that indicates that it doesn't matter if whether or not the link resolves. That's why John Mueller says, as he just said, that you can't no-index the page because it doesn't matter. You need to serve a 410 or you need to put in the disavow file. I don't know if John Mueller is right. If you need a 404 410, this evidence I have seems to indicate that even if it's 404 410, it's not going to work. I bugged Matt Cutts personally. He personally responded to me. And a lot of people, I know they caught a lot of flack. And there was a rumor going around linked by a high-profile member from Google, that from a high-profile white hat SEO who's good friends and connections with this guy, that Google admitted the Disavow file does nothing. This is before Penguin was released. And so I called Matt Cutts on that and I said, there's this rumor going around, what do you say about it? He said, no, the Disavow file will work for Penguin, almost kind of as if to say now, almost as if to say, okay, we're making it work like that now. And John Mueller has mentioned it a bunch of times. And John Mueller is so confident in the Disavow file that he says that you don't even have to pay for people to delete your links anymore. He says, that's a scam, don't do that. Definitely put your link in the Disavow file. And I know John Mueller, I like to think fairly well at this point. I know he's a straight shooter. I know he looks like he has a conscience and it looks like he wants to tell the truth and actually help webmasters. And so personally, my personal opinion, for what it is worth, is that I'm willing to take John Mueller's word when he says that. So I'm willing to take John Mueller's word that the Disavow file actually does something and hopefully will help with Penguin. At the very least, it will help with their algorithms enough that you can feel confident you don't have to pay people to go and delete your links for you. And the Disavow file will work. Anyway, so there's a whole slew of information. But John Mueller did say you can't use no index to get rid of Penguin. It has to be a 410. I have some evidence to suggest a 404 or 410. I have some evidence to suggest that a 404 is not going to work, that they can still hit you with Penguin. But maybe that's just because it was pointing to index.php, and maybe we know already, Matt Cutts has already admitted that they will do catenation from www to the root, and from index.php to default.htm, they will do catenation of ranking signals because they assume webmasters just made a mistake and meant to point it to index.html and point it to index.php instead. So you'll have to test it for yourself. But to be safe, you put it in the Disavow file. To be safe, you do make a 410 as well, and hope that will work, because that would be the safest thing to do. because that's what hasn't been tested yet and should, according to Google, should work. Okay. Finally, speaking of the disavow file, by the way, people were worried before if the disavow file worked or not, because there was some discrepancy. They used to not throw up an error. Now they do apparently throw up an error. If you submit a disavow file that has errors in it, or that's, it's like a Word doc, you can't do that. It has to be a text file. They will submit an immediate error apparently if that file didn't work. So, and of course, remember, your disavow file works like a robot text file. So whatever is in it is what Google is going to count. They read the link, they spider the link, they try to process the link. During that processing period, this is right from John Mueller, from that processing period, they check to see if there's a disavow file, and if there's a disavow file, if that URL they found the link in is in the list. If it's not, they pass link equity, either good or bad, depending on if they can trust the link or whether they think they can't trust the link, or whether they know they can't trust the link and they're pretty sure that it's manipulative. So remember, it works like a robot text. If you delete everything in there, you're not disavowing any links anymore. Although Cyrus Shepard, speaking of that guy again, he did do a test and he put a disavow file out there and he removed all the links from the disavow file and his rankings didn't change. So apparently Google is not going to let you go back. They said originally they were going to let you go back, but that experiment seems to show that they're not going to let you go back. So again, only put links in the disavow file that someone who really knows what they're doing has found the best risk mitigation strategy for you in terms of selecting the perfect links to put in there. And do not put any more in there at all, because you can shoot yourself in the foot, and apparently the damage is permanent. I repeat, permanent. Okay. And last but not least, something very interesting that John Mueller mentioned. I found this just fascinating, personally myself. That he says that Google reads and analyzes your sidebars and footers and determines what's the main content and what's the footer and the sidebar. We already knew this. But he also mentioned in his hangout back in August 16th that changing them will, and I quote, cause ranking fluctuations, end quote. Because somebody asked them, I have to change all my sidebars and footers completely with different content or remove them or something like that. That was the question. Will this affect my rankings? And I was half listening because I thought, no, that won't affect your rankings. They'll just, unless that was the only place you had content on your page and there's no other content anywhere else, then they were ranking it for that content. Yes, it will change your rankings. But I thought it's not going to change your rankings. And John Mueller surprised me. He said, yes, it will change your rankings, along with any change you make to your site. If you delete 100 pages, you change your navigation dramatically, or you 301, or you change domain names and 301, all that can change your rankings, including changing the sidebar and the footer. And he says it will. He didn't say can. He said it will cause ranking fluctuations, quote unquote. So I thought, this is fascinating. What signals in the sidebar or the footer are they using to either rank sites or derank sites that changing that will cause a fluctuation in ranking? Clearly, he just admitted, and this is what John Mueller does, that something in there is helping boost sites or helping them trust sites or helping them derank sites. So we could probably easily think of all the things that were deranking it. If they got the spammy content that I mentioned before for Panda, that he already mentioned in the same hangout. We can think of things that are using for trust, like if you have outlinks. Remember, Google is a group, a business run by a group of academics. And what do your professors in college always wanted you to do? They wanted you to cite your sources, right? So that Google follows the same philosophy, if I could use that word more or less incorrectly. Speaking of academics, and wants you to cite your sources. And I've seen tons of sites that seem to get a bit of a trust pass. They trust the site a bit more and are willing to trust their fairly spammy signals if they outlink to high authority pages like Wikipedia, especially in the health field. And they have mentioned this for Panda, that they want you to cite your sources and link out to, that's in the original Amit Singh All 23 question post from 2 or 3 years ago. So outlinking seems to really work, and so that can help you boost. And if you remove that, then they may trust you less. Either it's a slight boost signal, and or a trust signal, what I call a trust signal, and they will trust you less, and so they will count some of the nebulous, suspicious signals less, and that will derank you. So these are some of the ideas that I can think of. Or you actually have content in there. You have spammy links in there, or or you have followed links in there that should be no followed. They're affiliate links or paid links. That could possibly cause a deranking. So if you make that change, you could derank yourself. You remove it, you could boost your ranking. That's all the stuff I can think of that I know about, that I've heard Google talk about, that my own experiences and experiments have seen, that I use in my own SEO, that I could think. But it was a very interesting statement. So anyway, my video is beyond 30 minutes at this point. So I try not to make these things much longer than that. So anyway, a bunch of really interesting stuff today. Again, if you have any questions, by all means contact me. If you have any SEO questions, again, my email address is joshbachynski@gmail.com. And you can also follow me on Twitter at joshbachynski. And again, if you're probably already there, you might be on SEO Nitro as well. So if you want to view all my other videos, I've got lots of more tidbits, lots more information. You can find them all at youtube.com/jbachins, Jbachys. So again, good luck with everyone. Again, put your links in the disavow file if you're hit by a penguin, because they might be rerunning it again soon. Hopefully, cross your fingers, knock on wood. Again, good luck in the SERPs, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.